Okay, if you've been watching our videos lately, you've been seeing this in the background, and the dirt cheap LS motor I built is gonna go in this. And we've had it a couple months, but we didn't have a title for it yet, but we sent off for it, did a title bond, and now we've got the title to it. So now I feel better about doing a little work on it, and it needs a lot, as you can see. The floor pans and the rocker arms, they're flopping in the breeze. So I've been collecting up a few parts. I've got these braces, replaces that piece of rust there, this one for here, and I got these weird floor pans real cheap, but they're too long that way, and if you look here, they got a curve down, so I'm gonna have to make some miter cuts in here and bend it down, kind of chop it off a little shorter and bend it up for the tunnel. I don't know, maybe other than the wagon they have a narrower tunnel or something, but I'll make it work. So I got back here and I discovered that this cross piece was pretty much gone, rusted out. So that gives me nothing to attach these rocker panels to. So I've been doing some CAD, cardboard aided design, and I got me some sheets of 16 gauge. This is a 4x10 piece cut into 2-foot sections, and I've used that much of it, and I figure that's about less than $10 worth. So what I've been doing is fabricating that piece, because with the shipping they want like $400 for it, and I just can't do that. So I've been piecing these together. I left the weld on the inside, that's not going to show, but I kind of ground them down and rounded the corners a little bit. And after cutting out patterns and welding on these little 9/16 flanges, I left the ends unwelded because, as you can see, it makes like a 30-degree angle. So just gonna come up in here like so, and this one that I made came up a little bit short, but these two little flange tabs, I can put it in place and tack it and then piece in some pieces. So what I did was I put one tack screw in the middle so I can move it around, bent these tabs over, and now I got to get the car over here a little closer so I can reach with my welder and tack those in place. Now once I get them tacked in place, I'm going to have my end pieces right here and bolted down, and I won't be able to get it back out of there. So what I'll do is I'll chop that remaining section in the middle out, take it out, and that way once I got them tacked, I can finish welding it up and piecing in all my pieces. I can put that back down and just tack it back in place. So there's a lot to be done, but this is the kind of project I like. You get it real cheap, and if you can piece together the floor pan and not buy a $3,000 complete floor pan, you can actually get a little bit ahead on the project. So I'm gonna come back in when I got another day off and start tacking my pieces together. We'll see how it goes from there. Okay, it's a couple days later, and I've got everything put in place, and there's a few little spots where I can get some tacks in. Over here, I'll be able to tack these together. It's a little bit of a gap, but I think I can fill that. Once I do that, I can add a few pieces in here and over here that'll stabilize it. Then I can unbolt it, take it out, and finish welding up. So here we go with that. Okay, I've added in some little pieces here. Welds are kind of ugly, but it's kind of hard to get down in there in position. So we'll grind that down and smooth it out. And before I unbolt this and take it out, I want to put in these little flange pieces like so. And there'll be another one over here. And I got little pieces cut out for over here. That way it'll give it some rigidity and won't move around too much, hopefully. And once I take it out, I'll fill in the bottom, make a pattern, and cut out some pieces and weld that up. And then I can put it back in, and I need to make some flange pieces over here that we can plug weld onto the inner rocker. So I'm going to go ahead and get these pieces welded in, and then I'll chop this out, unbolt it, lift it out, and finish it up. Oop, didn't hold. Ooh, that's ugly. Okay, I've got all my little pieces tacked in, and I cut out these flange pieces that will go over here and get tacked to the ends so I can drill plug welds in there and weld it to the inner rocker. So I'm going to go ahead and get these tacked in. Okay, I got that flange tacked in place, and this one. So now, finally, we can cut out our center section, unbolt it, and then I can grind my ugly welds, smooth everything up, and finish the connection pieces. Okay, I did a whole bunch of touch-up welding and grinding and smoothing out, and it's looking a lot better. Trying to weld in place while holding something with one hand and welding one-handed is just, it's not good. It's so much better having two hands and being able to concentrate on what you're doing. So this is all I got left, is these two patches here, and I cut out some pieces, if I can hang on to it, that should fit in there like so, and this one over here like so. So I'm gonna go ahead and weld these up, get them all ground down and smoothed up. We can put a little etching primer on this, and I think before I even bolt it down, I'm just gonna paint inside and outside and just leave the flange to do some plug welds in. So gonna get going on this. Okay, I got it all pieced together from one side to the other, and I got some pretty good welds around my end flanges. And on the inside, I left my beads up in there because I didn't want to weaken it, but it's pretty much complete. Kind of a side-by-side comparison here. Yeah, that was just rotted out there, really thin there, and on the end rotted out. So now we got a solid piece, and I figure probably 40 to 50 bucks opposed to the 300 to 400 they wanted for the entire piece. But you know, it took a little bit of time, but I got more time than money, and I got all these sheets of 16 gauge that I was gonna, you know, make patches out of and whatnot. So I got a whole bunch of etching primer. So next up, we'll get it all sprayed down with etching primer, with the exception of the flanges, so get taped off. And then I'm gonna see if I can find some kind of paint or undercoating or something to you know, keep the rust from coming back, because etching primer just won't last that long, but it's good for adhesion. So when I get some more masking tape and a little more paint, we can get this painted up and set it on the body mounts and put it in place, and then we'll have somewhere to connect our inner rockers at the back, and I've got the new pieces for the front. And once that's done, we can actually put rockers in it, so, and keep it from falling apart, because if I try to lift it off the body now, it would just distort and collapse. So got to get this done first, at least get the rockers in there and some of the floor pans to kind of hold things together. So got to get some paint and put it in place. Okay, it's the next weekend, and we got a line of thunderstorms coming through. What I've been doing during the week is getting all my pieces painted up. I got some etching primer on there and put on really thick Rust-Oleum. And this one's ready to go. I got this one ready to go. Taped off the flanges. But I gotta get my inner rockers welded to my outer because I don't want to have to do that under the car. So we're going to see if we can get something done on that. Okay, I got a bead run all along here. This inner or outer rocker is so cheap there's no flange to plug weld to. So I'm gonna have to leave this weld here. I dress it up a little bit, but it'll get covered up and whatnot. So now that I got that all welded up, I'm gonna go ahead and try to use the spot welder and see if we can spot weld the bottom of this really good, and then we'll have a box that we can put in all in one piece and not have to weld it in the car. So I'm going to see if my spot welder is still working. Had to drag it out, clean up the tips and blow off the dust. So we're going to give this a shot and see if it's going to spot weld. To clean my tips a little bit better. Okay, I knew I had some new tips around here, so I got these swapped out, and now we'll see if it's gonna spot weld. Okay, that one held. Good. Alright, now we can do the rest. Okay, my spot welder was working good up until I started on the next one. And I think this 16 gauge is just a little too much for it. I was trying to avoid having to drill all the holes for plug welds, but we know for sure the plug welds will hold, so I'm going to go ahead and get this plug welded up so we can keep our progress going. Okay, got them all plug welded up. So now I'll just take the little shark pad and grind them down flush, get them all dressed up good so we can whatever needs to go on there won't have a bunch of bumps on it. So I'm going to go ahead and get that done. Okay, I got all my plug welds ground down and it's looking good. But I started doing some measuring, and this opening for the door pillar, it appears that this piece is made to scab over the old rocker, which is not what we're using it for. And when I measured over here on this B pillar, I noticed that it's only going to hit a little bit here, and there's no face here for all my plug welds. So we're going to modify it a little bit and add some pieces in so that we'll have something to attach to. I cut out these pieces and they'll go here. And I made this strip to fill in right here so that we'll have some place to plug weld to. Now, the pillar will go all the way down, and I'll make a brace piece, and then we'll get a plate that'll come up and plug weld to the door pillar, so it'll be good and strong. So I'm going to go ahead and get this welded in, and once I'm done with that, I think I can start cutting out the old rocker. Tomorrow it's supposed to be sunny, so today I want to try to get it ready to fit in this new rocker. So go ahead and get this welded up and start chopping. Okay, I got my little pieces welded in here in this strip right here. Got it welded up on the inside and out and got it smoothed out. So I think we're done with this for now. And now I'm going to start chopping out the old rocker. And you might say, well, why don't you brace it? Well, there's nothing holding it. I would be bracing it in the wrong place. So I'm just going to have to go by the doors and the opening. This door, the hinges are bent really bad, and the bottom of the door is rotten. It needs to be fixed, so it's just going to conform to wherever the rocker goes. But we got to have something in here to start welding our floor pans to. So I'm going to start chopping. Okay, we got all the rotted out rocker out of there, and earlier this week I reconstructed all of this coming down. There's still a few little more patches to do in here, and I replaced a lot of these coming down, and this right here is a whole new strip, and I pre-drilled it for plug welds. This one over here has got some rot up in here, but I've got to have something to weld to. Once I mount my brace over here and weld to this and get my inner rocker attached, I can kind of reconstruct this here area. So now the sun is going down, and so I think I'm going to come in the morning and do some fitting. By the way, this center brace piece is actually in pretty good shape. I think it was originally like 14 gauge. So I may have to do some patching. When I start cutting out the floor, I'll look and see if there's some areas that need to be patched. But at least I won't have to rebuild the whole thing like I did on this one here. So gonna come in the morning and see if we can start fitting up this rocker. Okay, it's the next day and we got much nicer weather. I'm getting ready to put my brace supports in, and I cleaned up a little bit where the body bushings are gonna go, and I just didn't want to put them on all that nasty rust. But this frame is in incredibly good condition compared to the floor pans, so I'm going to spray a little bit of etching primer just to, you know, keep the surface rust off after I cleaned them up, and we'll let that dry for a minute. And I want to get these over here. Of course, eventually when I take the body off, once it's intact with some rocker arms and some of the floor pans, we'll clean the whole frame up. But for now, we just want to keep the nasty rust off of our brand new body bushings. So what I've done here is there won't be any access to these bolts once I put the floor pans on. So I made these bolts up with a piece of square tubing so that it'd act like a capture nut. And over here I put these little tabs of sheet metal so that when the floor pan's on there, it won't push up in and fall inside. So we've got that all arranged, and I got this little section of the floor. I'm going to put some weld through primer on the bottom, then after I weld it back in place and fill in these plug welds, we'll spray some etching primer on there so it don't rust. So once that paint dries, we'll get these in there and bolted down, and I want to leave them loose a little bit so that I can ship them back and forth so they'll line up with the inner rockers. But meanwhile, I got to get some holes drilled in here for plug welds and some weld through primer on these. So let's go ahead and do that. Okay, got all my plug weld holes drilled out. So now I've got my grommets over here, or body bushings, whatever you want to call them. And this should set in here. Get that bolt off right. And pretty much up against there. It's got a little bit of wiggle room. It looks like it's gonna sit in the right spot. So now I got to get my other body frame up in here and get some nuts on there. I'll leave them loose so I can adjust them over to the inner rocker and get them tacked on. Okay, it's going to want to tilt around, so I need to get some nuts on these so it quits doing that. Alrighty. Okay, I got my floor supports bolted down and this homemade one back here. So now I got to get some plug weld holes drilled in this and over there. So we'll go ahead and do that. Okay, I got all my plug weld holes drilled and I cleaned out on the inside of everywhere I'm going to weld and sprayed weld through primer and on the rocker. Now, you're probably wondering why I didn't brace it, because, well, it's already bowed out on the bottom and it was out of place. So there's no sense in bracing something that's not right. So what I'm going to have to do is use some ratchet straps and pull it back over and try to make everything line back up. I did some fitting, closed the door, and it needs to go in quite a bit. This bottom of this fender is twisted out, so we're going to have to tug that over, plug weld it, and see how it works. So we're going to go ahead and start welding. Okay, we got a few plug welds here and there, and back here I had to use some C-clamps to pry it over. I've got it tacked to my frame piece in the back, and up here I don't have an inner fender because, I mean inner rocker, because I wouldn't be able to get it up in here. I'm gonna wait until I get the fender off so I can come in from the other way and start working on it here. This needs some adjustment. It's got a huge gap. I've got one side of this plug welded The other side has a gap, so I'm going to have to probably split this and add a little bit. It's close, but I don't want to force that. It'll bend the rocker. So a little bit of a work there, and that will be really good and strong. The C pillar or B pillar is really stout, and the door closes. Now we got a gap down here, but if you look up here, it's almost rubbing, and it's sitting up high here, so I think we can use a little bit of adjustment to come down. I think we'll be okay there. So it's not perfect, of course, but it's way better than what was there before. And now we got something to kind of build on. Now this over here is going to need some more filler pieces. I might use this, I might cut it off and add in a whole new piece. This right here is a little bit long. I may split it and curve it up, patch it into that. So up here, I don't know why, but they ended their upper part of their rocker right there. So I guess I'm gonna have to make a filler piece there, drill this out, plug weld it, come in from the back and clamp it to it and fix that. And then of course this fender is in way too far. It's kind of all collapsed, but it'll come out once I go ahead and get that lined up. It already came out some, so I'm gonna have to finish up all our plug welds and see how it turns out. Okay, got all my plug welds filled up, ground them down flush, and now I'm trying to fix this shortcoming here. This piece was not quite reaching, so I made this piece, and it will fit down in here like so, so that I can go ahead and use those plug welds and weld it right up in there to the inner rocker. So I'm going to see if we can get this tacked in place and weld it onto it. Okay, I got my little piece welded in here and welded up the plug welds and ran a bead up the flange there. That'll be pretty strong. It ain't pretty, but I'll get in there with a little belt sander and kind of clean up the welds a little bit. But now I want to weld back in my center hump piece. It will go like so. Of course, I have to line up my gaps better. And this is kind of sprung up, so I'll have pushed down on that. But I'm going to see if I can get this welded in here and smooth it all out, because the rear floor pans that I got don't go all the way over, so I'm going to have to save this little middle section. So I'm going to go ahead and try to get this welded in. my hump all welded in, got it smoothed out, and now we'll have some place to attach our floor pans to. So I think I'm going to go ahead and spray some etching primer on all this bare metal. Won't be able to work on it until next weekend, so just gonna get it a little bit protected so we don't get flash rust. Later on I'm gonna have to put some other kind of paint over it because the the etching primer doesn't protect too well. So I'm gonna get this thing sprayed down. Okay, got it all sprayed down really good. That's about it for this weekend. Next weekend I think I'll come in and fill in all our little gaps, get those welded up good, and maybe even try to fit a floor pan. We'll see if we got time for that. Well, it's the next weekend, and during the week I've been making little patch panels. Made up this one that will go, well, like so. It'll fill in that area. I got some little plug welds down there, and it was kind of rotten up here, so I had to add on a little piece. But before I do that, I need to get this little piece up in here in this missing gap. So gotta do that first. Then once I'm done with these two pieces, I can take this brace piece and let's see if we can get it to go down in there. The angle is slightly off on this, so I think I'm gonna make a little cut here and then extend it out so that it'll attach to this piece, and I can get that plug weld in there. And it only hits on the very bottom, so I think I'll run a bead up through here just to make it a little stronger. So I'm gonna go ahead and get going on this first, get that patched up, and then we can move on to that and that. But meanwhile, I've got these floor pans that are like way too long, way too wide. So what I did was I chopped this one off and bent that up to where it'll go up the tunnel, and shortened it this way, ran a bead here, cleaned it up. I left it a little bit of the weld on the bottom, gonna get undercoating, but now it's coming close to fitting in here, and I think with a little more trimming and fitting, I think we can get it to drop down in there. But meanwhile, my toe pan came in, and it actually seems like it might fit fairly well. So before I put this floor pan in, I want to get this toe pan up in there. Of course, this is going to have to really drop down some more and maybe get bent a little more and trimmed up. But I think we can make it fit. It needs to drop down just a little bit more, but you can see that it's getting close to where it needs to be. So we're going to go ahead and get the little stuff out of the way, and then maybe we can move on to a little more major stuff. Okay, got this little patch all welded up and got in there with a little belt sander and smoothed it all out. We'll get some etching primer on there before we leave today, but I'm gonna go ahead and get this piece prepped up to put in here. We'll weld up to that, and first I've got to get some weld through primer on this. Normally I would tape off where I'm going to weld and paint the whole thing, but there's so much welding going on all the way around that just putting a little tiny bit of paint on there wouldn't really work. So I'll just put on the weld through primer really thick, and once I take the front clip off, I'll have access to spray up in here, and I got to do a little bit more repair. So while I'm waiting for the paint to dry on this, I'm going to go ahead and start chopping out this toe panel, and that way it'll give me something to do while the paint's drying. So we're going to go ahead and do that. Okay, I got the majority of it chopped out. This up here is too rotted away to weld to, and eventually I'm going to eliminate these vents that go through the fenders, and I'll probably just replace all of this here. But for the time being, I want to try to see if there's enough good metal here to weld here and come across here. So over here there is a little 3/4 inch flange, and I need to get this cleaned up so that I can see if possibly there's any visible spot welds. If not, I'm just going to have to kind of grind it, cut it in little pieces and peel it away. But we'll get this cleaned up and see if we can find some spot welds. We'll get this out of here somehow. Excuse me. So I'm going to go ahead and start wire wheeling on this. Okay, it's so rust pitted you can't really see any spot welds. So the way to find them is jam a screwdriver behind there and start prying up and chop pieces out of it, and eventually you'll find them. But it's so much easier when it's not that rusty and you can just drill out the spot welds. So we'll find them one way or the other. Okay, we're getting most of the old toe pan cut off of here, and what I'm having to do is do diagonal cuts and jam a screwdriver in there, peel it up, cut them off. Once I get them like this, I come in with the grinder and chop them off, and then grind off all the little remnants of spot weld. So we'll get this cleaned up, and might have to repair a few little sections of this. It's a double layer down here. This piece has a 90 to it, so it's pretty strong down here. I'm not sure about up here, but we'll see. We'll clean it up with a wire wheel and assess that. Okay, it felt really thin, but the reason why it felt thin is because it's like 20 gauge, so I think it'll be good. I'll clean it a little bit more, get some weld through primer on it. But over here on this toe pan brace, I can feel in the back where it's really pitted, and there's like a little 3/4 inch flange coming down. I'd have to grind all this off, and then I'd end up cutting it off anyways. because it's so rusty. So I think I'm going to come along in here right below that edge and just chop it off and then weld in a piece of 16 gauge. And I think that'll be so much better than trying to weld to that rust pitted stuff. Up here it's good. And I'm gonna get some paint on here before I put down my toe pan, because we won't have access to this. But first we gotta get this fixed. I got this piece all pretty much smoothed out and throwed some Rust-Oleum in here. Put my weld through primer there and there. And I had to trim down this piece. I had to change this angle slightly and trim a little bit off of the top. And I got it marked where it's going to line up. I left about a ½ inch so that I can do the cut and butt. And over here we'll put plug welds, and then all along here we'll put plug welds, and that way we can come in from the front side once I get this inner fender out and plug weld this to the floor pan. And I'll probably just do a couple stitch welds meanwhile until I can get to that. But for right now, I'm going to go ahead and get this patch piece welded in, and that way when we're ready to put in our floor brace over here, we'll have something to weld to. So I'm going to get this done, and then I got to drill a bunch of plug welds here and get the back side painted. So we're going to go ahead and keep on working on this. Okay, should be ready to go in the morning. Got the etching primer, Rust-Oleum, and sprayed the weld through primer all around the perimeter. So gonna let that dry, come in the morning and see if we can't start welding it in. Okay, it's the next day, and all our paint's dry on our toe pan, and over here I still have to smooth out these welds in this little patch piece. And I've got my grinder all ready, a fresh shark pad, and this paint seems to be fairly dry, so we can get in here and grind this down smooth. and set our toe pan in there and see if we can weld it up. So we're gonna go ahead and get going on that. Okay, I got all my welds smoothed out on our little patch down here, and I've got the toe pan clamped in place. I want to get a couple of plug welds over here. Up here, where it's only a single layer, there's a pretty good gap, so I'm going to probably have to put some tack screws there. But if I can get a couple tacks on these plug welds down here and a couple here, then I can go ahead and start doing the cutting. But right along up in here, this needs to lay down. So I'm gonna get these plug welds started and start chopping away over here and start welding up our seam over here. Okay, I started my cutting bud over here. It's nice and even right there, just the way it sits. But if I push down, it gaps it out. So I think if I get a tack there, then I can push down and work my way up. So we're going to try that. Still kind of sticking up there. See if we can tap that down. Still a little bit high. Oh yeah, that's better. Now, just need to keep on cutting. Here. Okay, I think I need to get a new cutting wheel. Continue on up through here. Okay, I did my cutting butt all the way up and around over to here, except for where I'm gonna replace this piece. And I got some tack screws to hold this down. So now I want to go ahead and fill in all these plug welds. Of course, I got these down here done and smoothed out. So I'm going to go ahead and weld these up and smooth them out. Okay, I got my toe pan all welded in and plug welded and smoothed out. So now I'm gonna move on to getting this brace to fit a little bit better. There's a gap right here, and it don't line up with my homemade inner rocker. So I'm gonna cut it, extend it out, get it to where I can plug weld that over there. It sets a little bit high here, but I haven't got it bolted down yet. I think it'll squish down a little bit, and the angle's a little bit weird, but we'll see if we can get that straightened out. And also, I want to remove this brace and install my new one. But to get to it, there is a brace piece where these two bolt holes for the seat and over here goes underneath, so I'll have to cut that out and try to detach it from this. Chop a little bit of this away, and then we can get this in there, try to get it in the right location. Also, I think before I put in this floor pan, I want to do a patch on this gigantic hole they cut out for the shifter, and I think it'll be easier if I can reach up in here to push up and down and whatnot, maybe even put some butt weld clamps on it. So we're gonna get going on all these little projects. Okay, I got my patch fit. It's a little long up here, a little tight here, but I want to get it tacked down here, and then we'll just run the grinder through here and open it up here and here, and work our way up and do the cut and butt up here. So I'm gonna go ahead and get some tacks down here. Okay, I got this little brace piece out of here. I was actually able to find the plug or the spot welds because they were so big. Now this one, I can position it about right there and be able to weld it to the inner rocker. And this piece is what the seat attaches to. And I have where I drilled out the spot welds for alignment. But first I want to sandblast this really good and probably grind off these nuts and weld on new ones, because I'm sure the threads in those are just rusted out. So I think next weekend when I come in, we'll do a little work on that, a little work on this, and of course I still gotta fix my gap over here on this brace. So before I leave, I want to go ahead and put some etching primer on all this, just so it doesn't flash rust. And that way, when I come in next weekend, it won't be all rusted. So, I'm going to get that done, and we'll see y'all next weekend. Alright, it's the next weekend, and we're going to get rain all weekend. They're having a snowstorm up north. We're just getting the rain down here. So, I moved the 57 up in here in the shop. Got a light up in there so I can see what I'm doing. And I think I need to go ahead and get this junk cleaned out of here. I think I'll fill in these holes, maybe even do a little repair work on it. And the little piece that crosses over that the seat mounts to, when I started cleaning it up, it had this like tarry substance on the bottom, the undercoating, and that's pretty well preserved. Some little pitting up here, but I reconstructed these ends and welded on some nuts. Let's see, it goes this way. There we go, yeah. And this side will sit like that. And I drilled out the same spots where the plug welds are gonna go so we can line it up. So I gotta get these chopped off and welded on, smoothed up. And that way we don't gotta worry about this really bad rust hitting. So I think we'll do that here in a little bit, but I wanna get all this pile of rust out of here and get it cleaned up. Do a little maybe repair on this. We'll see how this goes. But then once we get that done, I can get this piece prepped, drill some plug weld holes in it. And I think what I'll do, since I'm waiting on this panel to come in, I'll just put one little tack weld on there, and then I can bridge that piece across and plug weld it to it. So I'm gonna get that done, and I modified this piece over here so it's sitting up flush so I can get a plug weld in there. Got it bolted down really good, and somewhere around here I've got my floor pan all painted up. I gotta find out where I put it. Well, it's here somewhere. I'll find it. Oh, there it is. Over there. So, I taped off where all my plug welds go. And I've got to get some weld through primer on this before I set it down. But I got up underneath and marked out where all the plug welds are gonna go. And that way, when I get these other little odds and ends done, we can go ahead and start plug welding this one in. So, we're gonna go ahead and get busy on all this stuff. Okay, I got this pretty well cleaned out. Looks like we're gonna have to replace some of this here. But this rusty bolt's gotta go. Well, we have access to it. So I'm gonna go ahead and chop it off so we don't have to drag all those rusty threads through there, and then try to impact it from the bottom. So we'll see if this is gonna work. Okay. I actually didn't think that was going to work, but it did. right, so now we can get in there and do a little more cleaning and start working on our other brace. Okay, I'm going to get some of this E-coat off of this little brace piece where I can make some plug welds, and that way when we're ready we can have some place to weld. So I'm going to hit it here and here, and we'll put weld through primer on there. Okay, I thought my hole punch thing had gone bad, but then I remembered it's pneumatic over hydraulic and it was low on oil, so I put some pneumatic oil in there and I got it working again, or at least I think I did. I'm going to see if we can pop some holes in this. Oh yeah, it's working. Okay. That's excellent. Might need to drill these out just a little bit. We'll see. Because they're kind of small holes. Yeah, I think I'll run a drill through those. Okay. Now we can start working on our other piece. Okay, I got my new pieces all welded on. Got a little etching primer and some weld through primer here. On this side I still got to drill out for plug welds. And when I drilled this out, I drilled all the way through so that I can see where it goes. So now I got to get these holes filled in because I marked it right here, here, and here where it's positioned. And also, this is really, well, was really pitted. I got the piece over here. So that's not it. Here we go. This came out of here, and I cut out this piece to fit down in there. I want to get this welded up in here, at least the top side of it. Later on, when I take the frame off, I can weld up the bottom of it and clean it up. But I've got to go ahead and get this piece welded in first, then fill in my holes. Then I can put this on. Once I got this on, then I can come over here and position this brace, and we'll have this brace and this brace ready to go. Of course, later on when I chop out this floor, I'll go up in here and patch whatever areas need to be patched. I'm not even going to weld here because this still needs to be cut out. The sides are good, it's just the bottom where all the moisture sat. So I'm going to go ahead and get this welded up, fill in my holes, smooth everything out, and go ahead and put my seat brace in. Okay, we got some pretty good metal down the sides because I was able to just run a bead all the way down. If it was bad, I'd be melting holes. So now I got to get these plug welds filled up and smoothed out. Okay, I think I got everything prepped up here. I've got my plug welds drilled here where this will go, and plug weld right there, and then of course over here, and I got weld through primer and my plug welds there, and down here where it's gonna go onto the inner rocker. But I gotta let this paint dry, so meanwhile I'm going to come over here to my floor pan, and I got to drill for plug welds along this flange. I was going to use my punch tool, but it just doesn't quite fit up in there. It's a really short lip, so I'm going to have to try to find some drill bit sharp enough to drill it. So I'm going to go ahead and see if we can get something done on this while we're waiting for the paint to dry. Okay, I couldn't find a good way to clamp this, so I'm just going to have to lift it up and see if I can get a tack in there. Okay, see if we're still good. Yep, I think that's gonna work. Okay, we'll get this welded up some more and then fill in our plug welds. Okay, I think we're all ready to plug weld our seat brace now. Okay, had to charge up the camera battery, but meanwhile I've been getting this massively oversized floor pan cut down, the one that goes in the rear. And yeah, I had to cut it this way and then take a big slice out of the middle, getting ready to finish tacking it up and my weld at both sides. But meanwhile, I've got this floor pan fit, if you can call it that. When you got to chop them up and rearrange them, you can't really expect them to fit too well. But I got a couple tacks over here. I got it down to the brace, and I had trouble with this corner up here. The curvature was just wrong. This is flat, the other piece kind of curved up, but it's gonna work. And I think I'll be able to get some of the plug welds before I take the body off the frame. I can get, well, about half of them, and that'll hold it together good. Basically just want to get the body stable enough to remove from the frame, then I can put it up on my dolly and, you know, finish up all the underneath stuff that I can't really get to. The frame's in the way of a lot of stuff. So it's getting dark out. We didn't get any of that rain that the weather people were talking about. You can see that the night light has come on. The camera doesn't really show how dark it is, but I think I'll come in tomorrow and go ahead and get all my plug welds done, do the cut and butt up there, and I still have to fix my B-pillar. I'm gonna have to cut some of this rod out and put bracing down here, and then make a piece to cover over this, and I'm gonna have to do that before I put that floor pan in. So we'll see how much we can get done tomorrow. Well, it's the next day, and the rain, sure enough, here. They weren't kidding. So I think now that we got everything all set up to start welding, I think we'll go ahead and start getting these plug welds. So we're cutting butt up there. See if I can get some of these plug welds, and then we can move on to fixing this B-pillar. So I'm gonna go ahead and start welding. Okay, I got everything all smoothed out. Got the little belt sander and got up in here. For an ill-fitting floor pan, I managed to make it fit. So now I'm gonna go ahead and see if I can do the cut and butt up here. I'm gonna have to move this tack screw over here so I can start here and start working my way over here. So I'm gonna go ahead and get it screwed down here, take this one out, and start cutting over here. Okay, I wanted to kind of cave in on me, so I got the screwdriver to hold it up even. Let's see if we can get this tacked. All that undercoating wants to burn underneath. We'll just let it burn off for a minute. And see if we can get this evened up. There it goes again, wanting to burn. It's pretty even here. Well now, it's pretty persistent. I kind of gouged it up over here. I have a gap to fill in. Let's see if we can get this. You don't want to weld too good when it's on fire. I think I'm just going to let that burn off. When we get down here to my new piece, I think we'll be okay. We're just going to have a little trouble with this older stuff here. So, I'm going to try to get this welded up and smoothed out. Okay, we got this floor pan pretty much finished up. There's no flange on this, but I'm going to go ahead and eliminate the flange, just weld these two together so that I have more clearance for the transmission up in there. And we got all our plug welds done and smoothed out. We got our little brace piece in here. We got this brace repaired and welded to our inner rocker. We made some progress. We got a outer and inner rocker in, and it's solid. That side you can grab a hold of it and flop it back and forth. So now we got stuff to weld to. I got my homemade cross member here, and I think I'm gonna go ahead and wait on putting this pan in until I've got that one, and then this one is coming in about the same time. So once those come in, we'll trim off this excess here, put this pan in place, and then we can go ahead and fit this one in, and then the rear one. So I think this is a good time to end this video, since we're waiting on more floor pans. And as usual, we appreciate y'all watching, and we'll have a part 2 coming up here in a couple of weeks.